Good evening, and thank you to Professor Adyam for the introduction, and thank you to Professor Chowdhury for organizing this session. I'm delighted to be here. It's been 50 years since I was on campus, though this time it's virtually. I have fond memories of my time at IIT Kharagpur. I was in RK Hall, and my favorite addas were Chedis and Nairs. I understand that Chedis is still around, and some of you might be enjoying their delicious omelets and spending midnight sessions there. Uh, that that is part of my memory now, and so after IIT, I went to IIM Ahmedabad for a very brief period, and then left for the United States to get my master's in aerospace engineering at Purdue, and an MBA from the University of Chicago. Then for the next 25 years, I was a corporate gypsy. I worked at GE, Chase, RCA, and Harman International. In 1996, I started a company on the web called Knowledge Links. Now you have to remember that in 1996, Yahoo was still being incubated in the Stanford dorms, and Amazon was just a glint in Jeff Bezos' eyes. And Sundar Pichai was a student at IIT then, and Google did not even exist. So it goes that far back. It was in the days of uh, Web 1.0. We were considered a pioneer. And at that point in time, anybody on the web was a pioneer. But anyway, we were written up in Forbes as best of the web 3 years in a row. And then in 2003, we had an exit. I semi retired and started teaching at Pepperdine University in the business school. Did that for a few years, and then in 2006 I finally retired, and since then I've been following my passion, which is to address uh, two existential questions. The first is, what is reality? And the second is, who am I? And for some of you, both these might be trivial questions, but I'm sure at some point in your lives you'll be wondering about these issues. And as it turns out, they're not trivial at all. And uh, and you'll see through this talk why I say that. So my passion was to get at absolute truth. But here's where I was when I started this journey, that there were two versions of reality. The one version is through Western science, where the belief is that what our sense organs, what we experience through our senses, taste, smell, touch, feel, uh, hear, and see, is all there is. We are born, we go through life, experiencing life through our sensory perceptions, and then we die, and that's it. That's the view through Western science, and I'll go into obviously, more detail than this. Then the other view is through the Upanishads, and the view from the Upanishads is that all that we perceive through our senses uh, are Maya or an illusion. None of that is real. So we have these two very different worldviews on what reality is. One says that reality is anything and everything that we perceive through our senses, and the other says what we perceive through our senses is an illusion, right? Very different. I And there can be two realities, right? There can only be one absolute reality. So it became my obsession to try and understand uh, which of it is real, or are they both saying the same things in different ways, or there could be some sort of synergy, one helping us understand the other point of view. So that's been my obsession for the last 25 years. Uh, the Western science, to begin with, I was very familiar with because I was grew up in high school with the science major, and then all the years at IIT, and then a master's from Purdue, so all science based, right? So I understood, most of science, and but the Upanishads were new to me. When I was growing up in India, I was not exposed to the Upanishads or the Vedas. I went to a Catholic high school, and then to IIT, and there was no opportunity to learn about Vedas or the Upanishads. You all are fortunate to have programs like this. I wish that these programs existed when I was a student there. So I came to the Upanishads through a circular route. My father-in-law, who's 92 now, was a physician and also is a Vedantic scholar. And I, over the years, I've had many dialogues with him. He would tell me his understanding of the Vedas, and in particular Advait Vedanta. And he would say things to me like, Sunil, you don't exist, I don't exist. There's only one reality, and that's all there is. Uh, that you and I are one, there's no difference. And none of this made sense to me initially, and many such Vedantic sayings that he would try and make me understand, but none of this made sense to me. So I decided to research the Upanishads on my own in very unconventional ways, not by reading Vedas or the Upanishads, because I don't understand Sanskrit, but I read many books by different writers such as Eknath Easwaran and many other writers who wrote about Upanishads in English. And I also looked at Westerners who had gone to India and had been so moved by the wisdom of the Indian sages and gurus that they converted to Hinduism. And one of them in particular, Ramdas, who's written a seminal book called Be Here Now, which was like the 60s hippies Bible, or the intellectual underpinnings of the hippie movement. So I was influenced by his writings, and through all of this, I imbibed the Upanishads. And so my talk today is about what I have learned about the intersection of Western science with Advait Vedanta. And some of what I've learned is quite revealing, and to my knowledge, it's not been addressed in this particular way by others. Uh, in fact, I've written two books on this topic. The first one is Shiva's Dance, a, a scientist, which is me, dances with the sages. So it is about my journey that I'm about to describe to you, much more briefly than it's in the book, obviously. The second book on this topic is Einstein's Unfinished Business: The Mind of God Revealed. And this is more directly the connection that I've made between Western science and the Upanishads. So these books are on Amazon, and if any of this interests you, you're welcome to go check them out through Amazon. So, to my talk. But before I get into the substance of my talk, I'm going to pose two questions to you that I'd like you to think about and keep these questions in mind as I go through the talk because they relate to the talk, but these questions are to you. The first question is that in CERN, Switzerland, is the Large Hadron Collider. This is the most powerful atom smasher in the world, bar none. It's the most powerful atom smasher in the world, where all the leading particle physicists journey to do their research and publish their findings based on what they are discovering. And many particles, including boson, has been discovered there. So that's the Large Hadron Collider. Now, outside this building, which houses the Large Hadron Collider and the research facilities, it's a massive campus. And outside the building is a larger than life statue of Nataraj, the dancing Shiva, which, by the way, gave me the impetus for the title of my book, Shiva's Dance, because at CERN exists the larger than life statue of Nataraj. My question to you is, what did do the particle physicists, the leading particle physicists in the world, what connection did they see and do they see between Nataraj and particle physics? So that's a question to you. Some of you may know the answer, and if you do, just keep it to yourself. But I will answer this question through my talk. The second question is from Hindu mythology. And the story goes, and some of you might be familiar with this story as well. The story is about Raja Janak. Raja Janak, it is said, went to sleep one night, and dreamt that he had been robbed clean, that he had become a pauper, and he was walking the streets of his kingdom begging. He woke up in a sweat and began to wonder if was he a pauper dreaming that he was a king, or was he a king who dreamt that he was a pauper. So he assembled the wisest counselors in his kingdom and posed this question to them, that who is he? Is he a pauper or is he a king? His counselors were stumped and they were not able to answer King's question to his satisfaction. So that is the second question. How would you address Raja Janak's dilemma? Who is he? And I will again address this question through my talk. So now, going into my formal talk, my talk is organized into three or perhaps four sections. The first section is a 50,000 view of Western science as it relates to this topic. The second section is again a very high level view of the Upanishads. And the third section is the connection between the two, which has been my focus and my discovery on how they are connected or not connected. And this is what excites me, and I still am passionate about this particular topic, the intersection of Western science and the Upanishads. So that's the third segment. And the fourth segment is really knowing all of this, what does it mean? How has it affected my life? And how might it affect you? And again, that's sort of the takeaway from this talk. So these are the four sections. I'll take a 5-second pause to catch my breath and have you process what you've heard so far. So here we go. The first section, Western science at 50,000 feet elevation. There are four pillars of Western science. The first is how did first is about the origins of the universe. And Western science says that the universe started some 13.8 billion years ago at the Big Bang. So Big Bang, a huge burst of energy which brought forth our universe, right? And this is an established uh, belief and view of Western science and how the universe started, right, through the Big Bang. Many books have been written on it. Many scientists have spent their lives understanding the Big Bang, and many have won Nobel laureates on their understanding of the Big Bang. There's also proof, which is the background microwave radiation, which happened at the Big Bang, and it's been detected now, and there was a Nobel Prize given for that detection. So that's the Big Bang theory. The second big theory, or the pillar of Western science, is how from inert matter, how from simple elements like hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, phosphorus, and nitrogen, did life emerge? And that theory is Darwin's theory of evolution, which says over 4 billion years, life from simple, large, complex has evolved to Homo sapiens, us. So that's the Darwin's theory of evolution. The third pillar is our Einstein's theories, uh, which shook up 400 years of Newtonian view of the world. Uh, the, in, the theory is the equivalence of space and time, that space and time are not two different things, as Newton has assumed, that all events happened in this three-dimensional space over time, and the three-dimensional space is like the stage. Newton said, no, 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 that's not how it is. You can't have space without time, and you can't have without time without space. So it's a space-time continuum. And space-time continuum is not an inert something out there, but it actually interacts with matter and forces, and matter curves space-time, and space-time tells matter how to move. Uh, that's sort of a simple-minded view of Einstein's space-time theory. The other theory of Einstein was the equivalence of matter and energy. That matter and energy are just different forms of the same thing, and one is convertible to another, and that's not in doubt anymore because it gave us the atomic bomb and nuclear powers, right? So that's the third pillar. Now, the fourth pillar is quantum mechanics, and that's the strangest of them all. As Richard Feynman, a Nobel laureate and a pioneer in quantum mechanics, is known to have said that it is safe to say that no one understands quantum mechanics. Uh, my editorial here is no one understands quantum mechanics except perhaps Professor Adyan. But so I do not pretend to understand quantum mechanics, but I've spent a lot of time and energy trying to understand it. And I'll speak to an aspect of quantum mechanics that's relevant to our talk. And it's quite foundational too. So, according to quantum mechanics, that at the subatomic level, there's no such thing as matter. What exists at the subatomic level is are things in potentiality or probability waves. So just think of this view of quantum mechanics, that there is no matter as such, and all that exists are probability waves. It even goes further, that all that is there is the interaction of probability waves. There's no substance at the subatomic level. And how substance occurs is when there's an observer to observe and collapse these probability waves. It's when these probability waves collapse, we get subatomic particles. And this is a very simplistic view, and I'm sure Professor Adyam would correct me, but let's hold on to this particular representation. And this representation is the closest to the Upanishad's thought, that all that exists is is this sort of non-substantial something, right? So that those are the four pillars of Western science. The first, the Big Bang theory, then Darwin's theory of evolution, then Einstein's theories, and then quantum mechanics, right? Now, four very profound discoveries, and which have given us the life we learn, all the tools and the computers and the airplanes and everything that you learn in IIT and then go out and create are all based on these scientific principles, right? Now, so that is so, but these scientific theories can neither individually or collectively answer Raja Janak's question. So there's nothing in Western science that can tell us whether we are in a dream world or is there something beyond this world, right? Western science uh, can't get us out of this bubble, the what we call the universe, which is and our sensory world that we call reality. Well, there's nothing in Western science that can tell us that it is not a dream. The one way for you to visualize, and which helped me, was to visualize this reality that we experience as being a virtual reality game. So it's as if we had put on our virtual reality headsets and we had entered this space, and which was all not real, but a virtual reality game where our sense organs, the sense of taste, hearing, sound, touch, feel, sound, sight, are all user interfaces, right? Just think of it, that these are all user interfaces, and this is how we interact with in this virtual reality game. So you're seeing me, right? And I'm looking at you, and I could as well be in your virtual reality game, that I'm an object, as if you were sitting in front of your computer and you were manipulating your desktop icons, such as folders and your other documents. They're all on your desktop computer, but they're not real. They're virtual. They're icons. So I could be an icon um, in in your virtual reality game, or you could be an icon, and all that's happening is that I think I'm talking to you. It gives me great satisfaction, and I can see some of you nodding your head, and you're all sort of icons, uh, and I can, uh, if I knew one of your names, I can call you out, and I'd feel great that I've interacted with an icon. Well, that's essentially the sum total of the Western view, and it can tell me convincingly that that is the reality. That's what Western science says is reality, but it can't disprove that this is not a dream, right? So that's Western science, right? Uh, just one aside, though the latest, which is string theory, is coming to the view that uh, that that there are other dimensions than the four dimensions that science has recognized so far. The three dimensions of space and the fourth dimension of time. What string theory says is there are at least six others. There are 10 dimensions in total. Six or seven of them are all bundled uh, up, and we can't interact with them, but they are there. Uh, and that might be getting close to what the Upanishads are saying, but that's an aside. So let's just keep with the four pillars. Uh, so now the four pillars of Western science cannot help Raja Janak, but the answer to why at Large Hadron Collider at CERN is the statue of Nataraj is as follows, because particle physicists say and believe and have theories to prove that all of existence is the dance of these particles, their interaction of particles and forces, and that's what creates all of existence. So all of existence is a dance of these particles. Well, Natraj in Hinduism represents all of creation as a dance, Shiva's dance. So that's the connection that the particle physicists and and precepts of Hinduism align that all of creation is basically a dance. So that's why particle physicists, and in particular, physicist Fritjof Capra, whose thinking has influenced me greatly. His book, The Tao of Physics, is one of the books I read early in my journey, and I would highly recommend it to you if you're not aware of it. It's the Tao of Physics. Fascinating premise. So that's sort of where Western science is, right? Now, what about the Upanishads? First, as you all know, there are four Vedas: the Rig, the Sama, the Yogr, and Atharva Veda. And excuse me because my Sanskrit is non existent, and it's been 50 years since I left India, so even Hindi is kind of marginal now. And you'd be surprised to know that in 5 years in Kharagpur, I learned Bengali, and I could speak it fluently, but no more. And আমি বাংলা বুঝতে পারি, কিন্তু একটু একটু বলতে পারি. So that's the extent of my Bengali. The rest I've lost. So So I'm going to attempt to speak of the Upanishads in Sanskrit, and so you'll have to forgive me for mispronouncing most of it. But just to recap, that there are four Vedas, and the Vedas are organized into two broad segments. One is called the Karma Kananda, which has all the rituals and the invocations and the ceremonies and the mantras and the prayers and the pujas and so on, right? So, the ceremonial part of the Vedas, which is all ritualistic. The other half, which is called Jnana is where the Vedic philosophy is, and those are the Upanishads. There are 108 Upanishads, and there are many interpretations of the meanings uh, of what's in the Upanishads, one of which is the Advait Vedanta, which is what I have uh, spent time trying to understand. And as you know, the Upanishads and the Vedas came about 3,000 years ago, and over hundreds of years, the Upanishads have been distilled down to, for those who are interested, in what are called Mahavakyas. There are over 100 Mahavakyas. Mahavakya means great sentences, and so there are over 100 great sentences. But four of these Mahavakyas are a distillation of the Advait philosophy. So I'll attempt to speak these in Sanskrit. The first one is Pragyanam Brahma, which means consciousness is Brahma. The second one is I am Atma Brahma, that Atma or the self is Brahma. The third one is I am Brahmasmi, that is I am Brahma. The fourth one is Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art, that you are Brahma. So four. Consciousness is Brahma, Atma is Brahma, I am Brahma, that thou art, you are Brahma. So, in a nutshell, the Advaitists say that all there is consciousness or Brahma. That's all there is. Any form or names we give to things are an illusion. The substance of everything is pure consciousness. All forms are like waves in an ocean, that though the waves look different, but they are part part of the ocean, or ocean is part of the wave. There's no difference between waves and the ocean. They're one and the same, and all that is exists is like that. So that, in a nutshell, is what the Advaita Vedantists say, that all of existence is pure consciousness. All forms are illusory. So now you have here now we are at the horns of this dilemma, right? Western science says all there is what our senses bring to us, and the Upanishads say that 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 is all Maya, an illusion. So, which is it, right? And that kind of was Raja Janak's dilemma, right? What is reality? Who is he? And that I had to resolve this dilemma for my own sanity. So here's what happened. So I reached this point, and it seemed like a dead end, right? So I took up meditation, and I benefited greatly from meditating. And in my meditational state, something different was happening to me. And I could not understand what was going on in my mind. So I wanted to investigate, how does meditation work? And there have been many fMRIs, and your brain waves change and all that, but which is a technical description. I wanted to understand deep down what happens and how our brains work. So I started reading up on neuroscience, and I read a lot of books on neuroscience. And through those readings, I came across two neuroscientists who have influenced my thinking greatly. The first one is Antonio Damasio. He's a distinguished professor of neuroscience, and the head of and the chairman of the Department of Neuroscience at the University of Southern California. He's written many books on the subject. The book that has influenced me greatly is called The Self Comes to Mind. And in this book is his research and thesis that our minds create what we consider our self, our selfhood. Sunil, my perception of who I am is us is created in my head, and Dr. Damasio shows how that happens. It's just fascinating. So his book and his thinking has influenced me greatly. The other neuroscientist is V.S. Ramachandran, who also is a very distinguished neuroscientist. He's a professor at University of California in San Diego, and written many books. You can find him on YouTube. And the book that has influenced me is uh, is called "The Phantoms in the Brain." And again, it's all about his research, so it's not an opinion. And it's about he cites many examples, but one of the examples, just for illustrative purposes, is that when people lose their limbs, some of them continue to feel that they have a limb, and their limbs even itch, and the limb doesn't exist, and they're able to address this itch by scratching some other part of their anatomy. And so he looked into why this happens, and what he discovered was that our brain rewires itself to create a limb um, in the head, so it feels like the limb that's been amputated still exists, but the rewiring has a mapping on some other part of your his anatomy. So he's able to scratch that part, and in this case was the cheek, and he would get rid of his itch. And this is a scientific fact. So just think about this, what's happening, and how the brain creates these images of our body parts. So that's neuroscience. So now let me try and connect the dots here. So according to Western science and now neuroscience, when we interact through our senses, what we are receiving are electromagnetic impulses, right? All you physicists and engineers to be would agree, right? All we're receiving are electromagnetic impulses, right? If we're seeing something, it's the photons hitting our optic nerves, right? And the same with touch, feel, and smell, and so on. So all we are receiving are electromagnetic impulses. These impulses then are transmitted through our brains by our nervous system. So you're following, right? So far, nothing. All that's happening is our electromagnetic signals going from the outside inside our brain, right? Now, when these signals reach our brain, neurons fire in our brains. So there's a neuronal firing going on, and the neurons fire in particular form particular pattern of firing, and this pattern is unique to the input we are receiving. So when we see a tree, there's a particular pattern of neuron firings, right? And so the neuron firings happen, still all electrical signals, right? Nothing else has happened. Uh, it is then our brains are, through evolution, are equipped to interpret these signals. And this interpretation is what creates our reality. So you're looking at me and you have processed all that in nanoseconds and you're seeing Sunil, right? But what has happened is you receive these signals, they've gone through your brain, your neurons fired, and the pattern that emerged has created for you what Sunil is, right? But that's in your head. That's not who I am. You'll never know me, right? Your brain has interpreted that as Sunil, right? So now this is this is totally mind blowing. If this hasn't blown your mind, I don't know what else will. So, but going back to our topic, that this is how reality is created. It's created in our heads, and that's what the Vedic sages said, that our all reality is an illusion. They didn't mean that it doesn't exist, but that it is Maya. It's created in our heads. So now we are here, where what the Vedic sages discovered 3,000 years ago, and it amazes me how they came to this insight. Western science, in particular neuroscience, has validated that all of what we consider reality is Maya. Just process this. It just amazes me. Okay, so now the Upanishads and the Western science are saying the same thing, that the reality is all constructed in our heads. Many profound implications that affect our lives if you really truly believe this. Have no doubt. I have no doubt about this, that this is what it is, and you have to be as convinced as I am to benefit from this knowledge. For example, the implication is, if you change your mind, you can change your lives. uh, so think about it. Many have said that, but now it has meaning for me, and I do believe it. So having understood this has significantly affected my life and has changed my life. It's changed how I live my life, what I believe, and what affects me, and what doesn't, and 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 uh, the sages say that this is moksha. If you get to this point, it is moksha. I'm not to that point yet, and that's what, in popular New Age language, this is self-realization. To realize who you are, right? That's what self-realization is. But is that the end and all there is? Uh, Not quite, because the sages have said that to get out of this reality that we are engaged in is possible, but not easy. So they have discovered and have organized it into the Upanishads and the Karma Kanda procedures for how you can escape from this virtual reality game. And their suggestions are meditation, yoga, mantras, chanting. All these are tools, or the technology for escaping this virtual reality. So I have adopted meditation, and meditation has helped me immensely. But for some others, it might be mantras or yoga or chanting or any of these other technologies. And they are technologies. So they were not only scientists, but technologists as well. And it's just amazing. So the point is this, that if you're skeptical and you don't believe on any of this, but you are scientists and you're at IIT, you can experiment and verify this for yourselves. Take up meditation, take up yoga, take up chanting, whatever, and experience this escape from virtual reality, because that's the final proof. We're all scientists, right? We need experimental proof, and the experiment and the proof is very individual. So I can't convince you of this real reality. You have to convince yourself, and you have to prove it to yourself that this is so. And not only that that's so, but even modern sages like Sri Aurobindo, his book Life Divine, and Sri Aurobindo went through this, says there's 7 stages of consciousness. Whether there's 6, 5, 4, or 7 is not what matters. It says that he, through discipline, and he wrote a daily log of his experiences, that there's 7 stages that you go through before you realize uh, pure consciousness or Brahma, or if you wish, divine. It's where when Arjun saw Krishna and in Bhagavad Gita. So you go through 7 levels of consciousness. So it's not easy, right? And it requires much practice and devotion and dedication. I'm not at that stage by any means, but I'm not done yet, right? And so anyway, this is where I'm at. I'm totally fixated, and fixated is not the right word. I'm energized by these discoveries, and I continue this studying and reading and thinking about these things, because I'm at my ripe old age of 72. If I don't do it now, I'm running out of runway, right? So that's it, and I'm sure you all have questions. So I'll turn it over to Professor Chowdhury, uh, and I'm here. Thank you so much for paying attention, and fire away. Thank you.